Hello everyone, Fanta here, you're watching FANTAVISION, and today I'm discussing a topic that you might think I've covered already, and I kind of have, but it's from a different perspective. I am discussing my first day as a GameStop manager, because I've had quite a few people ask me about this. I know some people are going to get upset and go, "Oh, Fanta, you've already covered being a GameStop employee your first day." I rewatched that video, and I'm not going to touch on anything I touched on there. I'm not going to talk about what it was like my first day working there, just my first day of management. What that was like, what my bosses told me, all those different things, and some of the things I was trained on to become a manager, not just a GameStop employee. Today, I am not, unfortunately, drinking beer. I'm drinking key lime LaCroix. Tastes amazing. And the reason I'm not drinking today is because I feel like crap. So when I'm sick, really don't like drinking alcohol. I've heard that it lowers your immune system, so I don't want to do that any more than it already is. So today, drinking LaCroix to hopefully feel better soon and hopefully not lose my voice again like I did this morning. So let's dive right in and discuss what it was like being a manager. Well, my first day as a manager, because I have discussed what it was like being a manager. I've discussed how sometimes I was in the store alone, and that was something I was really scared of when I knew I was going to become a manager. I mean, that was such a weird concept to me, that I was just going to be running the entire store by myself sometimes, and the fact that I'd be managing other people and having them doing the old tasks that I used to do for years. Because when you're just a normal employee, you're doing all the vacuuming, you're doing all the floor work at the end of the night, and you're cleaning everything, and you're wiping everything down, and you're dusting, while the manager is counting up the safe, making sure all the cash registers are all balanced, getting the money ready for the next day. You're doing all this different stuff, and I was always also worried. That was another thing I was worried about before I became a manager was, what do I do if the safe is off? It's going to be blamed on me. Because whenever something happens, the person who's kind of, taking care of it or counting it is the one that kind of gets the blame when it's off kilter. Either they'll think you counted it wrong or something like that. When, of course, you've had like 2 or 3 other employees using all the registers, so it could be one of their faults, but it's very hard to pin down which employee did it. And it also makes your store look bad. It makes everybody kind of look bad that worked that day if the registers are off. And that was kind of scary to me, I didn't know what to do about it. Also, when you count the money for the deposit, you have to make sure you fill out everything in the right area. You have to... It's so weird that you just take all of the money and then just go to the bank with it and deposit it. I don't know why that's weird to me, but just if somebody knew that we did that every night, they could easily just rob us. They could just wait for us to walk outside with that day's money and rob us. I mean, it was super simple. It's just a plastic bag. Don't do this, okay? I'm not telling people, hey, it's easy to rob GameStop. And I don't think all GameStops did this. I think some GameStops had those like armored trucks thing pull up, and then they just hand it to them, and then they deposit it for them. I don't know. I just know that at that GameStop, I would drive it to the bank every single night that I was a manager. Really, really interesting to me. And another thing that came along with the things I was worried about, I'll get to my first day in a second, but there were definitely these things that I was kind of nervous about before I became a manager. What if Now, this wasn't a huge worry because, like I've said in previous videos, yes, the company of GameStop is not a good company, but the people I worked with were great. I mean, I loved the people I worked with. They were all like my friends. Like, I didn't mind going into work to talk to most of these people. There were some people I was like, I'm going to be working with this guy. Well, it'll be okay. I'll try to talk to him. Because that's the thing is with GameStop, like I've said, it's a small store. you have to work well with these people because you're standing right next to them. At Walmart, there were plenty of people I didn't like, and I could just walk away. The store is huge. The department is huge. I could just ignore them my entire shift. I could forget that they're there. But at GameStop, they're in your face. You're in this small little closet of a store. You better get along with who you're working with. Even if you're not a huge fan of them, you try to make the most of it. And that's what I always did. I'm not going to try to make their day harder. I don't want them to make my day harder. I want to get through that shift, on to the next one, and hopefully find some common ground or discussion we can have about stuff. And also, I mean, I was really young when I became a manager. I was like 19, 18, somewhere around there. So it was just kind of that, well, what happens if a customer goes off? I don't have that authoritative age behind it. I don't have that seniority. So I'm going to be younger than all these people that are going to be yelling at me most of the time. Because most of the time, the people that were yelling were not people my age or younger. They were adults that were just raised as children, or raised, to become children. I don't know. It doesn't make sense why some of these people acted the way they did. But like I've said in other videos, there were people like that. And they're, of course, always older than me. Usually they were more than twice my age. And they still acted like just petulant children. Ridiculous. And I was worried about that before I became a manager. Like, how do I handle that kind of situation? But when that time did come, it wasn't too big of a deal. I stood my ground, even if corporate and my managers, disagreed with how I handled it. I think I did the right thing standing my ground. If you're going to scream at me and call me names, I'm not going to help you, as I've said. So those are all these different things that are going through my head before I even become a manager. I'm like, do I want that kind of responsibility while I'm going to college? Do I want to have to worry about working even more hours and have to be even more responsible for shifts that need to be covered? Because that's the thing, is once you become a key holder, you're pretty much expected to cover shifts when the other managers are sick. And because there's 3 key holders, there's the manager, assistant manager, and me. I mean, that's huge. You have only a couple other people that can take care of the store at a time. And that's really difficult. Now, sometimes we had another key holder as well, but more often than not, we only had 3, sometimes 4 key holders. So if 2 of them have been working all day, or only one of them is working, the other one's on vacation, one of them's sick, if that guy who's been working all day needs to take a lunch, or he needs to go home because he can't go over his hours, or something like that, I'm expected to come in if I can. And that caused a lot of really annoying moments when I had to do that. And that was another reason why I was like, I don't know if I want this job. But my first day as a manager, when I finally was promoted to a key holder, was mostly training of stuff that I kind of already knew, just kind of going over the morning checklist, which was this annoying thing where I believe I've discussed that as well. I'm not going to go into that, but there were definitely some annoying procedures that I had to learn as a key holder. Taking inventory every day, which inventories, how to do it, how to do the stickering, how to find shipments and the thing, how to do shipments, all these things that I was being trained on doing. Now I had to do it by myself while managing somebody else. And my first day of actual management, because my first day I was a manager, I believe I was with another key holder or another manager. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I wasn't really nervous. But my first shift when I actually took over for the other manager, and my first shift when I opened, that was an interesting experience, coming in that early and opening the store, sprinting to the security system, punching the code as fast as I could. Because if you don't get it fast enough, then the security people call, and it's just a big hassle. You have to tell them the correct passcode or something like that, so they know that everything's fine. And I was always worried I was going to forget the passcode. And yeah, it was it was interesting that first morning. And then the first time I closed while managing someone it was again just this surreal experience of I'm in charge of everything. Especially the first time I closed alone. That was crazy. That was like, but it was also kind of relaxing. I know I've discussed that as well, because there's those long lulls with nobody in the store. And you can kind of just drift off into your own mind and just think about a million different things. Especially because I would keep getting everything done on that back counter almost immediately, depending on the time of the year. But I mean, if I'm managing alone, most of the time, it's because it's a dead part of the year and there's long periods of time where people are not coming in, especially near close. Most people weren't dicks. But I have, of course, discussed those people that come in those last seconds. And you're like, can you please get out of my store? I want to go home. I get that you're having a great experience here. This is your free time that you've decided to spend in GameStop. But I don't want to spend any more time here. I want to go home. And that didn't happen too often. And thankfully that didn't happen my first night, because that would have been weird. But it was definitely an interesting experience walking around that empty store. And the most pain in the ass thing that I found out when I was a manager was whenever you had to go to the bathroom, it was just a pain in the ass. Especially if you're closing by yourself, because you know there's not going to be anybody else coming in. You're like, well, I guess I'll either just hold it and be in lots of pain, or I'll have the bathroom door open and the door to the main GameStop open. And I already know people are wondering, did you ever have to shit? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. But also, fortunately, nobody ever came into the store during that time. I usually just speed shit, got my stuff done, washed my hands, ran back out, and there was nobody there, which was good. I mean, there were monitors I could kind of see if I leaned out of the bathroom a little bit. I could see into the monitor so I could see if people were walking in. It also makes a beep when the door opens, so I would have a couple seconds to kind of react to what was going on. But overall, that would have been a terrible experience to have to deal with. And I'm very fortunate and happy that it didn't, because I did have managers who unfortunately did have that happen, where people came in and he basically just had to shout, "I'll be with you in 1 minute. 1 second. Don't worry." But at least the way that GameStops are set up nowadays, that wouldn't be too big of a deal. But back then, it was kind of intense, because they actually had headsets on the floor, and those locking peg hook things, I mean, you can just yank those headsets off easily. I mean, they're held up by plastic and cardboard on a metal rod. I mean, you just yank it. And some people did that. Accidentally, some people broke them too. They were just trying to look at it. They twisted it wrong, trying to look at the back, and it just popped off. And they're like, what do I do? And they just hand it to you, and you kind of go like this, because the manufacturers are idiots, and you have to put the plastic thing back on with tape, and it looks terrible. I mean, there were so many different accessories that I had to repair the little, like, cardboard thing. That was in Walmart too. They're on this metal thing, and they get these little cardboard punch outs where you slide the object or the item in. And people are going to be looking at it. They're going to be, taking it off, putting it back on, taking it off, putting it back on. And then some of them, they just get ripped, and then you got to tape them, staple them back together, and it looks terrible. But you got nothing, you can't do anything else about it. Another thing that happened my first couple of times was, for some reason, I was just terrified of counting that money. I know I talked about how I was scared of, like, I can count, obviously, but for some reason there's this tension when it comes to counting that money, especially because you have like a time limit, because you really want to just only have 30 minutes from store closing to leaving the building. So you've got this time limit going on in your head, because they're really strict with hours. They don't want you going over. They don't want anything like that. If you have to, you have to. But most of the time, they want you to get your ass out. Not as bad as Walmart, but they were definitely still very stingy about hours. And if you went over, sometimes they'd cut your hours next week. And they'd do stuff like that all the time. Or you just get scolded, and that's never fun. So I don't want that to happen. Plus, I was still new, so I wanted to look good. And I didn't want to miscount, and I'm trying to do everything perfectly. And there's certain ways you have to do it. And I had some managers, because I had so many different managers, that some were really anal about how you had your money. Like if they weren't all facing the same way, who cares? It's still worth the same amount of money. You can tell what it is. It still says 20 on it. It doesn't have to be face up to know that. That makes no sense. And sometimes you would miss, because again, that safe had like a 10-minute thing, so you try to start it before you close. And I'd also try to count one of the registers out before we close. If there's nobody in the store, I'll open it. I'll start going through it, start taking out all the change, start putting the right amount of change, taking out all the excess money. And what would suck is if I did all that work because it was so dead, and then all of a sudden we had this huge rush. It's like, well, time to use that register again. And that happened a couple times during my first couple months of being a manager. So I kind of learned how close to closing I should start counting the register, because that was something that my managers taught me, to close the store and get out sooner to preserve hours. But sometimes, like I said, it bit you in the ass, and then you kind of did more work than you needed to. But more often than not, there was more than enough time to get everything done. There's just like that high pressure that you have to just get out of the store as quickly as possible. Maybe that was just our GameStop. I don't know. But I know all the GameStops I worked at, they really did try to close up and leave as soon as possible. Everyone's just got that race. They just want to sprint to the finish. And you especially feel bad when you're counting the money and you're holding everyone else up and they're done with everything. I don't know. That's just how I felt. So that pressure would get to me, and sometimes I'd miscount, and then I'd have to count it all again. And I, again, know that's stupid, but that's just how it was, and that was way back when. Especially when I was a little noob to it. But I really did enjoy being a manager much more than just being a regular employee. I enjoyed just kind of hanging out with my coworkers that weren't managers even, because I was the chill manager, because again, I don't want to deal with a high-strung, over-the-top, too zealous about their job manager. It just doesn't make sense, especially in retail. It's like, really? You work at GameStop. And I've had those managers that were like that. And before I became a manager, I knew I'm never going to be like this person. I don't care how much corporate loves these kind of people. I can't do it. I don't like dealing with them. They're not fun people to be around. They take their job too seriously. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, of course, take my job seriously. I'm still going to do well, but I'm never going to be like that person that makes you kind of groan when you walk in. And that, I definitely had a manager like that. And he had a lot of drive. He had a lot of motivation in life. But I just did not want to be anything like him. And I wasn't. I mean, I kept the numbers, keep going. I kept the numbers high. But if they were struggling, I'm not going to sit there and scold them. I'm just going to try to help them. And that's what I did. I helped a lot of people improve their numbers and get better at their job. I helped them ease into their job instead of making them scared into it. And I felt like that was a better approach, and it worked. So I would say if I ever did that again, that's what I would do, but I'm never going to be a manager of retail. But if I'm a manager in like an office scenario, I would apply the same thing. I would be, fair. I wasn't strict. I mean, I held the rules up. It's not like I let all of them lax. I let the stupid ones lax, because of course, everywhere you work, there's some stupid rule. But the rules that made sense, I of course kept, but again, I wasn't a dick about it. So really, to wrap this up, before I became a manager, I was worried that I was going to be either too strict or not strict enough, or say the wrong thing, just completely botch it. And I didn't. Not even my first day. I, of course, did. I know. I made a couple mistakes. I'm a human. I did. I don't quite remember them. I don't think there were huge things. I think occasionally maybe I miscounted or something like that. I don't know. But overall, I enjoyed being a manager way more. It was a lot better being able to hang out with other people because I wouldn't have been able to. You rarely ever see your non-key holder coworkers when you're not a key holder because you'd see them for like maybe 20, 30 minutes and then they'd leave because you were taking over their spot. And even as a key holder, so I got to see everybody. I got to see the people who are not managers. I got to see my managers. It was a lot nicer that way. And I enjoyed having those times where I got to close the store by myself. It was really relaxing, more so than it was tense. Like I said, I mean, even if it was busy, it wasn't a huge deal. You kind of had that. They understand. The customers kind of understand when you are working by yourself and there's just a flood of people all of a sudden. It was usually not steady, super busy whenever I worked alone. It was like nobody and then just a wave. But they would understand if the wait was a little bit longer because you're the only person there. Did it suck when it was super busy and you worked there alone? Yes. But I feel like that time alone at the end of your shift, when the TV turns off, because the TV turns off at a certain time after the store is closed, and it's just that silence. I don't know. It was really relaxing. And just kind of being alone in that store that I used to frequent all the time. It was interesting. I don't know. I could kind of think. It was like one of the few moments out of my day at that time that I could really just kind of completely relax. Because it's not like I can work on homework. It's not like I can study for a test. There's nothing that I can be doing. I've done everything. I've cleaned the store. I've counted the money. I have the money in the bag ready to go. And I still have another couple minutes till the store closes. And then afterwards, I'll have to wait another 10 minutes for the safe to open anyway. And I usually shut off the store light and just kind of sit there. Well, I guess I'd stand there in the store and just wait and just kind of unwind. Because I knew as soon as that was done, I mean, sure, I was racing trying to get home, but at the same time, when I got home, I usually would have to do some homework or go to bed or something like that. Just because, again, I had, classes in the morning usually, or I had some tests I had to be studying for or something. But in that moment, it was just really peaceful. And that was really nice. It was really nice. So, some positive things to say about working at GameStop. Again, I don't know if I ever made that episode about positivity of working at GameStop, but there were definitely moments where I did enjoy working there. But the crappy pay, the crappy company policies, the shitty marketing that they tried to employ definitely dragged down the experience. It could have been a lot better if they treated their employees, their managers, and just basically everybody, even their customers, with more respect. So that's why it's dying. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Leave a like down below if you did. Comment down below if you have that same sort of first day management experience. What was it like? Were you afraid to be a manager? Were you afraid to have that kind of responsibility? Were there any employees that kind of resented you for getting that promotion over them? Thankfully, I did not. So it made the transition even more stress-free. All the people I worked with liked me. At least I think they did. I don't know. None of them acted like they didn't. And a lot of them thought I deserved that promotion because I'd been there for so long and they liked working with me. And because they liked working with me, they couldn't wait until I was their manager. So hopefully that was your experience if you've become a manager. And maybe you could tell me why you don't want to become a manager, why you refused that, which actually that's what Eric did with Office Depot. He refused the offer of management because he didn't want that kind of responsibility because he just doesn't care enough about it. He doesn't want to keep working retail. And he knows that if he takes that management position, he'll have to care a hell of a lot more and he'll be held to a higher standard. So maybe you're like that too, and I understand. I understand where you're coming from. I had that fear in the beginning. So let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a fantastic day. See you guys. Somebody recommended me this flavor, key lime, by the way, a long time ago. And I know the regular lime doesn't taste that great for LaCroix. The lemon isn't that amazing. Those basic flavors are kind of meh. But this is so good. Also, thank you to all my patrons, and I wanted to start a new thing on Patreon where I will be doing a monthly video just for patrons. So if you're $1 and up patron, you can watch it. If you're $2 and up, which I have a new tier for, you can vote on what the next episode could be, or the next Patreon video will be. So if you want to do that, check that out. And yeah, thank you for the support that everyone already is giving me. And even if you're not on Patreon, seriously, thank you for watching these videos. Thank you for subscribing. And it's, like I said, 2018 was an insane year. And it really is so much fun making these videos for you guys.